Hello, it's Amy, and I'm here with another book haul. I took yet another trip to the book bazaar here in Ottawa on Bank Street, and I thought I was going in for just one book I'd had my eye on last month that I didn't buy. But then, as often happens, all the choice selections got the better of me, and I came away with five. I'll show you what I went in for first. So it's this little volume of essays titled Men, Women, and Books by Augustine Burrell in green cloth here. And it's Charles Scribner, 1894. I'd seen it last month. It hadn't quite been in my budget at that point in time because the book itself is or was $45. But I went back for it now that it is rolled over into a new month of book buying, and I picked it up. And so let's take a look at our essay topics here. And I do like Augustine Burrell. I've read something by him before, but he's someone I've not explored in too much detail yet. So we have essays on Dean Swift, Lord Bolingbroke, Sterne, Dr. Johnson. Dr. Johnson is, of course, a favorite of mine, and any essay on Dr. Johnson is an essay that I want to read. Richard Cumberland, Alexander Knox, and Thomas De Quincey, Hannah More, Marie Bashkir-Sheff, Sir John Vanberg, John Gay, Roger North's autobiography, Books Old and New. That one piques my interest. Bookbinding, also another chapter that piques my interest. Poets Laureate, Parliamentary Candidates, The Bonafide Traveller, Hours in a Library. That one piques my interest as well. Americanisms and Briticisms. That should be interesting as well. I wonder if I can compare Canadianisms while reading that one. Authors and Critics. And so just a little volume of essays by Augustine Burrell. But then as I was browsing, I came across a title by Christopher Morley that I'm not familiar with. I am, of course, familiar with a couple of his novels, Parnassus on Wheels and The Haunted Bookshop. But here is another book by him in this lovely pink dust jacket, author photo on the back, and I'm pretty sure this is a collection of essays. It's not entirely clear to me the way this store has things organized. It's not always, the novels are with the novels and the essays are with the essays. Sometimes they just have things grouped by authors, and you'll see George Orwell, and it will be his novels, any biographies written about him, and collections of his letters. Or you'll see Virginia Woolf, and it'll be Virginia Woolf's novels, her journals, letters, and whatnot, and literary criticism on Woolf. And so it's not always easy to tell just from the way that things are shelved. And the flaps really don't tell me all that much either. It's more about Morley as an author, although yes, it does make reference to literary essays and tributes to authors, so I think my assumption here is correct, that these are essays. But we've got some interesting ones. The first one's called The Ironing Board, which appears to be about a wedding. Lord Chesterfield is mentioned here. Conference at Quebec, which should be an interesting one. Wedding Beats, Hitch Your Wagon. Bacon's essays. And so I'm assuming this is going to be a mix of light, almost personal essays and more literary criticism. So there's that, and it's really exciting to find the dust jacket so intact for this one. Let me just see what year this one is. 1949. So there's that, Christopher Morley. And then the title of this one caught my eye just as I was about to check out. Lucy Howard's Journal. And I think it's fiction, but the word journal caught my eye because you know me and old journals. But it is the journal of a young woman. The book is from 1858 here. And I think it starts in her school days, having to do with her education. We begin Wednesday, August 1st, 1810, where she says, "They have given me a nice blank book for a journal. I've written my name and the date as well as I possibly could. What more to put in it, I'm sure I don't know." And it goes on from there. I'm going to do a little bit of research online to see if I can find anything more about this book. I've yet to do that. Published by Harper and Brothers. And hopefully I can find out if it is indeed the novel that I think it is, or I suppose it could be a real journal. The author here is Mrs. Sigourney. This battered blue, somewhat dirty cloth here, but that was an exciting last minute find because I'm always up for more journals. And then I came across this one, The Breakfast Table Series by O.W. Holmes. And I thought this was rather serendipitous because earlier this morning I had been reading another book. This is The Bankrupt Bookseller by Will Y. Darling, and it is the fictional diary of a bookseller. And in a particular passage he was talking about the Breakfast Table series, and I made a mental note as I was reading that I should dig into that more, and lo and behold I go to the bookstore and here it is. And we have a book plate here, Francis Gubbins Kilfresh, I think. Francis Gubbins Kilfresh, Semper Fidelis. And here is our frontispiece of Oliver Wendell Holmes. And our title page here from 1892. The only thing that made me pause about this book is the printing is quite small. But it was, you know, it was too much to pass up because I don't know when else I would stumble across the entire series in one volume. Because I do have part of the series in a single volume. I think it's an Everyman's Library volume. But I had never seen the full series in a single volume before, and certainly not for such a good price, I imagine. Just because it's a very heavy book, and I can only imagine the shipping cost if I were to try to search out a copy online in the future. And then I've got one last here, which I saw it, and I saw the Stevenson, and of course I picked it up and I realized it was essays. And Robert Louis Stevenson is a favorite essayist of mine. And I did pause because the top of the book is a little bit chipped, a little bit ratty. But I did want to read these particular essays. 1911, Lay Morals and Other Papers by Robert Louis Stevenson. And I do find this format quite attractive. I thought it was interesting though, because I've got a couple of J.M. Barries in this. I guess you would call it the same format, the same publisher's format. And so I'm almost tempted to put this on the shelf next to those J.M. Barries just because they all kind of match. But on the other hand, the Robert Louis Stevenson is up on the top shelf here, just out of sight of the camera, and the J.M. Barrie is over there. and I'm just noticing the top of this is a little bit dusty. It's going to need a good wipe down. But who knows, because things are about to get chaotic in this apartment. I am having the wall in the main room of the apartment redone this week. The building management is bringing in a crew, and they're going to sand it down and repaint it for me. Because, well, there's a number of problems. The main issue is that there's a couple of cracks in the wall that were evidently painted over when I moved in, and they're showing through again. And you do expect that in an old building when things settle. But the other issue is the paint itself is kind of bubbling and cracking in some places, because evidently somebody has put latex paint over layers of old oil paint or something without priming properly, and so there's a few spots in that part of the apartment, particularly, which is the old outer wall of the building, where the paint is just not looking as it should. And then I guess there's the third issue where clearly some previous tenant has had their TV mounted there, and the holes from the mount was patched rather badly, probably by the tenant who mounted their TV on their way out the door. And so the paint's not looking too great over that either. But they're going to take all that old paint off the wall, do it all fresh for me. But because of that, I'm going to have to rearrange all the furniture. Probably all the books are coming into the bedroom here to be stacked in various corners and whatnot, because I do not want the books in the main room of the apartment to be exposed to the dust and the paint and whatnot. And they'll come in here, and the door to the bedroom will be closed whenever there is work happening. But because of that, who knows, I may end up rearranging all the books once again, and maybe the Barry and the Stevenson will end up next to each other, which would be fitting because they were friends, they did know each other, and I'm kind of imagining it. I could bridge the difference between those books with the Stevenson and Barry, A Friendship in Letters. But that's just a thought. So that's my little haul of the 5 new books, but my occupation for the rest of the afternoon is going to be reading some more of The Bankrupt Bookseller. And the spine of this book says The Bankrupt Bookseller, but I actually finished about halfway through the volume, The Bankrupt Bookseller proper, this morning. And the second part is actually a second book titled The Bankrupt Bookseller Speaks Again. And there we go. That is the page where it kind of splits itself. And so I stopped there, went out for a walk, went out for a little bit of book shopping to pick up a few groceries. And now I think for the rest of the afternoon, I'm going to settle in and enjoy the rest of this one. And I'm really enjoying this one. It's actually really, really good. It seems a very simple premise on the surface, published in, well, I think the 1930s. My particular edition is from 1947, but I'm seeing initially the private papers of a bankrupt bookseller, published in 1931. But, the foreword tells us right from the start that the bookseller in question has taken his life and is no longer with us, and these are his found papers. And that is the premise, this found book, this found book premise. But then, as we read through these papers, we discover that it's not. He was a little depressed over his inability to succeed in business, but he's got kind of a much more complicated and darker past related to his service in the First World War. And of course, it's got all sorts of good stuff because he talks about, what he's reading, what's in stock, and there was one particular passage where it's sort of leading me to want to, make his dinner as my dinner tonight. It's very, very simple. But he talks about cutting up 4 tomatoes and frying them up in butter with a couple of eggs, which is a very, very simple dinner. But I'm like, ooh, that could be kind of good. I kind of want that for my own dinner. And so while I was out getting the books, I did stop into the store and pick up some fresh tomatoes. And I think I will make that and eat it with a couple of the baking powder biscuits I made last night on the side. But yes, so I'm going to settle into this book and post this video up to YouTube, and I'll see you all again soon.